Have you ever wondered what makes some people so precise, so particular, so unable to deviate from even the slightest perfect detail that they're unable to get out of their own way? I'm not talking about perfectionism. I'm not talking about your friend who cleans their room all the time, or your coworker who always makes sure their coffee order is exactly right, but about the individuals with the genuine, reality-fracturing fear that things must be one way, or else. Someone who takes such precaution to avoid germs that they wash their hands until they bleed from dryness. Someone who, after speaking, feels the need to repeat themselves as many times as it takes for the words to sound just right off the tongue. Someone who might see with their own eyes that they have moved the gear shift to park, but will still have to continuously convince themselves that the car will not roll away upon leaving it. OCD is a silent killer. It preys on our deepest fears, often stemming all the way back to childhood, twisting and warping them into demons that haunt us in the present. No one is born with it. There is no cure. There is only the constant anxiety associated with fear-induced fight or flight from thoughts in our own head. Thoughts that loom large. Thoughts that terrorize and torture. Thoughts that can only be described as the work of the devil. Obsessive-compulsive disorder, or OCD, is an anxiety disorder that affects about 2.3% of the world's population, roughly 184 million people at any given moment. Characterized by intrusive, obsessive thoughts and accompanied by repetitive actions or rituals known as compulsions, OCD can completely disrupt and debilitate one's daily life. The disorder is largely associated with overactivity in the amygdala region of the brain, which is responsible for processing the emotions of fear and anxiety. The process goes as follows. Someone with OCD might have a sudden, fear-inducing thought about any given topic. Maybe they are worried that they left the gas stove on before leaving the house. This is generally a rational fear, as no one would want to burn their house down or start a carbon monoxide leak. The difference between an individual with OCD and one without lies in their response. The individual without OCD might think, wait, I wasn't even in the kitchen, or there's no way I would have left the stove on, and that would be it. They'd simply accept their own reassurance and move on. Objectively, the stove wasn't left on. The individual with OCD is incapable of such reassurance. The thought of potentially leaving the stove on has triggered the overactive amygdala, which will now begin to flood the brain with stress signals, intensifying the obsession that there might be a serious problem. At this point, evidence as to whether the stove was actually left on or not becomes futile. The obsessive fear takes over, and the individual feels that they must reassure themselves in some way about the nature of the stove. And in such captivating fear, reassurance can only be found through compulsions.
Show me all the blueprints. 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 Show me all the blueprints.
The uncontrollable repetition of words or phrases observed in the previous scene is a prime example of someone falling victim to compulsions. They do not want to repeat themselves and are aware of the outward bizarreness of their behavior, but they feel if they can repeat the phrase just right, they can move on to their next thought. In our stove example, the individual may feel compelled to call a family member and have them check the stove, or they may turn the car around and drive all the way home to check for themselves. In extreme cases, one might take pictures or videos to confirm that the stove was not left on before they leave the house preemptively. These actions, these compulsions, are the only way that individuals with OCD feel that they can navigate their paralyzing fears. They bring a sense of safety and relief until the next worrisome situation arises. By giving into the compulsion, the brain becomes accustomed to the fact that it can allow the anxiety to win. In essence, when the floods of panic take over about whether or not there are still germs on one's hands while washing them, the brain that once reassured by saying, "You've been washing long enough, you're clean," now steps aside and allows the compulsion of washing for 2 more minutes to provide the reassurance. The fear that the individual's hands were not already clean is irrational, and it leads to the irrational action of continuing to wash them much longer than necessary. This is how OCD begins and how it snowballs out of control. Over time, we continue to willingly give in to our irrational fears rather than shut them down at the root, and we compulsively take any action that might release us from them. When you hear stories of people who have to tap on the table 40 times with their left hand before they can eat their food, it's not that they're crazy. It's that they're doing anything they can to relieve themselves of this debilitating fear. So the question becomes, why are we so afraid? Why are we so fearful that we can't even reassure ourselves? That we can't listen to the voice in our head that we know is true for fear that it somehow still might not be? Where is our self-confidence, our belief in ourselves? Where does this doubt come from? In the beginning, God made heaven and earth. The book of Genesis details God's creation of the world, from the introduction of light and dark from nothingness, to the seas and the birds, to perhaps God's most complex creation, when on the sixth day, God formed man out of dust from the ground, and breathed in his face the breath of life, and man became a living soul. Everyone knows the story of what happens next. Placed in the Garden of Eden to live a life of eternal paradise, Adam is given a companion in Eve, and the two are given one simple commandment from God. You may eat food from every tree in the garden, but from the tree of the knowledge of good and evil you may not eat, for in whatever day you eat from it, you shall die by death. Adam and Eve were content to follow this commandment until a certain serpent began whispering into Eve's ear, sowing seeds of doubt. Did God really say that? The serpent asked. Is that really what he meant? Eve attempted to defend God's word, but the doubt that the serpent had placed in her became far stronger than her belief. She succumbed to the serpent's whims and ate from the tree, resulting in Adam and Eve's banishment from Eden and humanity's fate of mortality. Whether or not you believe that this story actually took place, it serves an important purpose in the context of humanity. While it is primarily known to illustrate the human urge to submit to temptation, the original sin also exists as a cautionary tale in which an evil force persuades an innocent, believing person to betray their beliefs as a result of doubt. Doubt led Eve to betray God and eat from the tree. The serpent, which we know to be the devil, whispered these words of doubt, and his cunning and devious nature were enough to convince Eve to act against what she knew to be true. Does this sound familiar? Doubt is a powerful weapon. The voice in our head attempting to irrationally convince us that we left the stove on, or that our hands are not clean, or that we didn't appreciate a certain moment enough is the same one that Eve heard. We know the truth of these situations. The doubt we feel is the result of an external force, one attempting to paralyze our minds with fear and anxiety. Could these emotions be the work of God, whose message is love? No. This external force, this invader and disruptor of our peace, can only be described as the devil. The more we doubt ourselves and what we know to be true, the further we invite him into our minds. The obsession spiral begins, and the cunning devil thrives on our fear as it weakens us and leaves us vulnerable. The resulting compulsions, the need to reassure ourselves by taking actions that we know to be irrational, are caused by that same external voice, whispering to us, do this or else you won't feel better. Check that you lock the car 15 times. Repeat yourself until the words sound right. Imagine the moment you got the promotion again and again, replaying it as if it were currently happening. These actions are nonsensical. They waste our time and entrap us further in the obsessive-compulsive loop. And as we mentioned earlier, they feed our OCD as a whole, as we begin to lose the ability to navigate our thoughts without attaching rituals and compulsive actions to them. We become weaker and weaker as the devil's hold on us grows.
The devil is not creative, nor is he powerful. He's just repetitive. Repetition is his weapon. Repetition is his weapon. And what is he repeating? Lies.
The devil is not creative, nor is he powerful. He's just repetitive. This profound lesson is one of the main themes addressed in Pastor David S. Winston's sermon entitled Dismantling the Schemes of the Enemy. Winston highlights that while we are constantly under attack from the devil in all facets of life, there is really only one method that the devil uses against us, more specifically, against our minds. The word devil comes from the ancient Greek word diavolos, which translates to false accuser or slanderer. Broken down further, the first part of the word, dia, means to penetrate something from one side through to the other. The second part of the word, volos, derives from valo, meaning to throw, such as a ball or a stone, or in a more figurative sense, it can describe actions like hurling an accusation or casting fear into someone. And so who is the devil but the false accuser, the doubt-spreading liar, who is attempting to consistently penetrate our minds by throwing at us lies, accusations, and seeds of doubt until we believe his nonsense. His method is simple. Attack repetitively until the false belief takes hold in our minds and the thinking has been poisoned. Not only is this a spiritual truth, but modern psychology supports this notion in the form of the illusory truth effect.
Psychologists have termed or coined this term the illusory truth effect. And it basically says this: the way that the human mind and psyche is created, that the best way to get someone to believe a lie is to just repeat it over and over and over again. If repeated enough times, the information may eventually be perceived to be true, even if the sources are not credible. Interesting. They go on to say the effect can happen even if someone had previous knowledge that the information was false.
And so the devil knows our weakness. He knows that all he must do is repeat himself enough times for us to believe him. That is why once the fear loop begins, the more times we replay our intrusive thoughts, the harder it is to break out of the cycle. Each of these what-ifs weakens our belief in ourselves, as if the devil were breaking down the walls of our minds like throwing rocks against a window. Having uncovered the devil's schemes of repetition and deceit, we are left with one final question. Why? Why does the devil want so bad for us to live in fear? The devil's motive is simple: to destroy our potential. The more time we waste fighting obsessive-compulsive thoughts, the less we have to fulfill our God-given purpose and rise to our potential. If we believe that God put us all here on earth for a given purpose, then wouldn't it make sense that the devil would do everything in his power to prevent us from reaching that purpose? Every intrusive thought we feel the need to dissect, every irrational fear that compels us to stop our work, every earth-shattering worry that isn't a big deal in hindsight, these distractions are targeted. And the devil uses these methods not only to stray us from our God-given potential, but away from God himself. He knows that the closer we are to God, the stronger we are against these spiritual attacks. If we surrender control to God, placing our worries in his hands, we relinquish the need to wrestle with our thoughts and try to gain the advantage. So the devil imposes a barrier between us and the divine by trapping us in our own minds. We must let go. We're not strong enough to deal with this on our own. The more we try to fight against these thoughts, the deeper we find ourselves underwater, struggling to find the surface. God can be our shield. He wants to be. He will never let us suffer more than we can handle, and the closer we bring ourselves to him, the stronger our spirits will be against these attacks. You have something to offer the world. You, watching this video right now. The devil does not randomly choose who he's going to attack. He attacks those who will do the most good because they pose the greatest threat to him. Take solace in the fact that you've been targeted by the devil because you've been chosen by God.